on the status of women. Today we're looking forward to hearing our update on pay equity. Our witnesses today are Parliamentary Budget Officer Yves Giroux, along with some people from the department, Robert Berend, an analyst, and Salma Mohammed Ahmed. And so, of course, before speaking, wait until I recognize you by name. And when you want to speak, you can click on your microphone to activate your mic. All comments should be addressed through the chair. You can choose interpretation, very much like all meetings at the bottom, either floor, English, or French. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly for the benefit of our translators. And so I think with that, we'll begin. Monsieur Giroux, did you have a few minutes of opening comments to make? To you for 5 minutes then.
Bonjour, Madame la Présidente, et merci, et bonjour aux membres.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chairs, and members of the committee.
Thank you for the invitation to appear before you today. We are pleased to be here today to discuss our fiscal analysis of Federal Pay Equity Report, which was published on November 4th, 2020 and produced by my office. With me today, I have our lead analysts on the report, Robert Berend and Salma Mohammed Ahmed. The Parliamentary Budget Officer supports Parliament by providing independent and non-partisan economic and financial analysis to parliamentarians. As the legislation states, we provide this analysis for the purposes of raising the quality of parliamentary debate and promoting greater budget transparency and accountability. Consistent with the PBO's legislated mandate, my office prepared an independent analysis of federal pay equity. The purpose of this report is to provide an overview of the spending measures associated with the Government of Canada's proactive pay equity regime within the federal, public and private sectors.
My remarks in English. In December 2018, the Pay Equity Act received royal assent, establishing a proactive pay equity regime within federally regulated public and private sectors. Approximately 1.3 million employees fall under the aegis of the Act, about 390,000 in the public sector and 900,000 in the private sector. While Budget 2018 and the 2018 Fall Economic Statement identified new money to establish the government's new administrative framework for the Act, no details were provided regarding the anticipated fiscal impact arising from consequential changes to remuneration. Based on information provided to the Office of the Parliamentary Budget Officer by the Government of Canada, we estimate that the ongoing cost for regulatory oversight in federally regulated sectors of the economy is $5 million, and the ongoing administration of pay equity within the federal public service is estimated to be $9 million. The PBO requested the government's fiscal analysis of how much more money is expected to be spent to comply with the legislation. However, the government refused to share this data, citing confidence of the Queen's Privy Council for Canada. Nevertheless, we use alternate sources in our analysis of employee compensation for the core federal public service. These data suggest that once the Act is fully implemented, the federal wage bill could rise by $621 million starting it in 2023-24. The core federal public service represents approximately 30% of the federally regulated workforce. It does not include crown corporations, the prime minister's and ministers' offices, parliamentary institutions, nor the private sector. Therefore, the impact on all federally regulated workplaces will likely be substantially greater. Given the depth of expertise required and possession of employee-level administrative data, the federal government itself is best placed to report on the cost implications to employee compensation. Parliamentarians may therefore wish to encourage the federal government to provide estimates of expected increases to federal public service employee salaries, along with analysis of potential impact on pensions and other future benefits. On that, Madam Chair, I'd be pleased to respond to any questions you may have regarding our federal pay equity analysis or other PBO work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Several of our committee members actually sat through the Pay Equity Special Committee years ago, so you'll see lots of interest. We're going to go to our first round of questions. When people get close to the end, I will be flashing the 1 minute card. When they get within 20 seconds, you'll get the lucky dollar. So with that, we're going to start off, and I believe Ms. Sahota has the first 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here today to discuss your recent report on pay equity and the Pay Equity Act. Given that yesterday was the 50th anniversary of the Royal Commission on the Status of Women and the topic of pay equity being one of the issues that report highlighted, I believe it is fitting that today we study what the government has or hasn't done for women. It's unfortunate that the Liberals couldn't give this file the attention it deserves, and ensuring that the minister responsible for pay equity, the Honourable Philomena Tassi, could make an appearance here today, but I look forward to her coming in January and answering our questions. Canadians can be assured that Conservatives will always stand up for women and equality. So in your report and in your presentation just a few minutes ago, you referred to several times you made the request to the government for the documents to help you assess what the cost would be to bring about pay equity. Yet the government cited cabinet confidence on those documents. What specific documents were you requesting? In your experience, has this become a common practice of the government to withhold information from you? And has this hindered your process at all?
Thank you for the question. So, Madam Chair, the documents that we requested were specific information on the number of employees by classification group and the composition, whether it's female-dominated or male-dominated. So that's the type of information we were looking for in the public service. The government indicated that it could not provide this information because it was a cabinet confidence. Presumably because that type of information was provided to ministers when the government considered the pay equity legislation at cabinet and cabinet committees. So in my opinion, it's difficult to determine whether it is indeed information that is cabinet confidence because our office or myself didn't even get to see it. But because something is included in a memorandum to cabinet or is discussed at cabinet itself, doesn't mean that the information could not be provided if it was to be provided separately of the memorandum to cabinet. And I often give a simple example. If you attach a Globe and Mail article to a memorandum to cabinet, of course, it's a confidence of the Queen's Privy Council, a cabinet confidence. It doesn't mean that you have to take back all the issues of that Globe and Mail journal or that newspaper because somebody discussed a Globe and Mail article at cabinet. So I think in that instance, it may well be a case that the government considered items or information that we needed, that these were considered as part of the cabinet deliberations. But I'm not sure that it is indeed something that would be damaging for the secrecy of cabinet deliberations not to have provided that information to my office. The other question of the member, does that constitute a normal behavior or has that been repeated? Fortunately, there have been only very few instances where the office has been denied access to information. So generally speaking, I've had good collaboration on the part of the government. The main exception to that, aside from the pay equity information, has been tax information. So whenever my office or myself seek information that's related to tax information, the government is very, very circumspect in providing that information to us, even if we ask for a certain level of aggregation when it comes to data. So these are the two exceptions, general exceptions being tax and pay equity being a specific example where the office was not provided information that it needed to fulfill its legislative mandate.
You said that it was cabinet confidence that the government said because of that reason they couldn't provide that information. Now that the legislation has been tabled, is it possible to get that information?
So the answer to that question is still no, because it remains a cabinet confidence even after the legislation has been tabled. But as Madame Sahota pointed out, now that legislation has been tabled and passed, in my opinion, that's probably a factor that militates in favor of providing the information. But that being said, we made the request before, after the legislation was tabled. So the argument that legislation has been tabled and therefore the PBO should get access to that information, that's the kind of same argument we made. And that didn't seem to change the government's perspective on providing information.
Thank you. So as a result of the lack of transparency by this government, you had to use alternative sources to discover the cost. You stated the cost would start at $477 million, and with additional employee benefit costs would rise to $621 million. Given that the government has deliberately withheld information from you, could you reasonably believe that this cost could be much higher than what you have said in your report?
Well, we used information that was publicly available, but of reasonably good quality. So it's quite possible that the real cost will be higher, but I don't know how much higher without having access to the information the government holds. I'm not sure it would be significantly higher. Only the government would be in a good position to determine that with the information they hold.
Very good. Now we'll go to Ms. Saeed for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks to our witnesses for appearing before the committee today. My first question is for Mr. Yves Guiraud. Thank you for being here to speak with us about the Pay Equity Act, Canada's first proactive pay system. It has been a long time coming, and we are really looking forward to its implementation next year in 2021. I had a look at the regulations that the government has put forward in Gazette 1 for consultation. So within those regulations, the department provided estimates on the cost for both the federal public service as well as the private sector. So do you agree that these estimates provide important and necessary information?
Yes, thanks for the question. So, Madam Chair, the regulations provided information on the cost for a 10-year period. So this is indeed an important element in determining the potential cost for the pay equity regime. And it's also an important information in determining the impact of the pay gap for work of equal value across the country over the 10-year period that's covered by the regulation, at least the cost. So yes, it is important information.
We all know that pay equity legislation is necessary, and I am really pleased that our government introduced it and passed it in our last mandate. This is a transformational system and will finally enforce equal pay for work of equal value within the federal jurisdiction. Can you please speak to how this system will create benefits for Canadian women and the work of advancing gender equality?
Well, my understanding, Madam Chair, is that the pay equity legislation will require employers to set up pay equity committees and also look at male-dominated and female-dominated employment groups, and will ensure that the female-dominated groups have pay or remuneration that's equivalent to those of male-dominated employee groups for work of equal value that includes skills, work effort, and so on. So legislation sets out a series of criteria, which I won't go over because that would require much more than 5 or 6 minutes, but it will be an important step in ensuring that work of equal value is recognized at the same level of pay across various groups. So it's not just goes beyond work that is identical or similar, but it provides a value to the work that is performed by various groups. So yes, in that sense, it's an important step forward in gender equality and providing the promotion of work value as opposed to just the comparison between work of identical work.
So you agree with this, that this legislation will help will be beneficial to Canadian women and will help in advancing gender equality. So you agree with that?
Well, that would be very hard to be against that. So given that it's the stated goal of the pay equity regime is to provide equal pay to work of equal value. So I think one of the benefits will be obviously to provide enhanced pay for groups that have been disadvantaged. And it's true that it will benefit some women, but it could also benefit some male-dominated groups. Although no example comes to mind, but it will certainly further enhance or advance gender equality.
Chair, how much time I'll...
1.5 minutes.
Okay. Could you speak to the benefits of this system it will bring to our economy? Because I know our government estimates that pay equity will create a net benefit of 28 million in the next 10 years without even considering the spin-off benefits that will come with a system like this. So could you speak to the benefits this system will bring to the economy in the next coming years?
So I'm not sure, Madam Chair, that I can speak very well to the overall benefits. The purpose of the report was to look at the cost for the federally regulated sector, and in this specific case that we considered was to look at the cost for the federal public service. So from that perspective, it will increase compensation for mostly female-dominated groups by about $600 million annually starting in 2023-24. So that's probably one of the benefits that I can speak to. That's part of my mandate.
Very good. And we'll go to Madame Larouche, 6 minutes.
6 minutes, please. Mr. Giroux, it's a pleasure to see you here before the committee. As my colleague was mentioning earlier, in the context where last year we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Royal Commission on Women, well, there has been a lot of changes made over the past 50 years, a lot of progress. But yesterday in my speech, I talked about the work that remains to be done. For example, the Pay Equity Act. Mr. Giroux, I think we need to look to use this situation to try to put forward measures that will be feminist to help with the economic relaunching the economy. In Quebec, there has been a law in place in 1996. The federal law was only voted in 2018. I mean, we need to think about how we're going to implement this new law. What are the obstacles at the federal level? Why is it taking so long? I'd like to hear your opinion on why it's women who are disadvantaged in the end.
Madame la Présidente, je peux pas...
Madam Chair, I can't speculate on the reasons why the federal level has taken 22 years longer than it has in Quebec. It is a legislative measure. It depends most likely on the willingness of legislators over the years. What I can say, however, is that the advantages for women, as is shown in the report, is that remuneration will likely, based on our estimates, increase for disadvantaged groups by about $620 million per year, starting in 2023-2024. That is money that will likely end up in women's pockets because it is often women who are part of these disadvantaged groups. when we're talking about work of equal value that does not receive the same level of remuneration. The measures the federal government tabled after the implementation of the Act indicate that there are about $2 billion of net actualized value over a period of 10 years that will be invested in the private sector in additional remuneration. So that is money, again, that will find its way into the pockets of disadvantaged groups, usually women, who do work of equal or equivalent value to the work of men, but don't always get the same pay. There are financial advantages. You mentioned them. For example, there would be more money in women's pockets. I'd like to cite a study by the CNESST in Quebec that indicates that there are other advantages, not only financial ones. It was a study conducted with private businesses. 43 businesses that were at the end of the pay equity system, or process rather, saw that there were increases in their and better atmosphere at their work, for example, better knowledge of the jobs available, 29%, and many more advantages, for example, better atmosphere at work, and so on. So it's not just the financial aspect. What other kinds of advantages could this law lead to?
Donc, Madame la Présidente,
Madam Chair, it's clear that when a business or an employer recognizes employees' work better or conducts a further study of the jobs and the value of the efforts that are required for each category of tasks or responsibilities, well, employees are more recognized, especially for employees who feel more neglected, either because of inferior pay or other factors. So better recognizing employees helps. That is an advantage that will surely follow the implementation of the Pay Equity Act. There is also a better retention of employees, a better capacity to attract employees as well. If we look at, there's a category of work that is categories of work that are more dominated by women have higher pay. Well, it will be easier for those sectors to attract, or those businesses to attract, more women and more workers to those jobs. So there's better retention for these businesses, and that would be a very significant advantage. Perfect. And I also mentioned, actually, we often talked about the impacts of COVID on women and how implementing these measures, how we could have implemented measures differently so that women were less impacted. Women have really seen so many negative impacts. Madam Chair, that's a question that is very difficult, much more difficult to answer. The pandemic is something that has turned things upside down, and it is unprecedented. It is difficult to imagine what the Pay Equity Act, if it had been fully implemented, could have done to improve the situation of women. The pandemic has impacted many different groups and impacted them very strongly. So I don't know what the Pay Equity Act could have had as an impact as on the job markets for women. It's very difficult very difficult question to answer, unfortunately. Great. So as you said,
Matheson for 6 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you to the witnesses for appearing today. I would have to say that I certainly agree with many of my colleagues that we're talking about something that was brought forward in a report to government 50 years ago. The fact that we still haven't seen the implementation of that legislation that you commented on bringing forward that problem certainly delays women being able to actually be seen as having the same rights as men. And ultimately, I think that it's important to stipulate that these are human rights, and that as
the government as an organization that brings in legislation and laws to change these, they are also an employer. So they play a dual role in terms of the violation of these human rights. When you did the study and you mentioned that the government withheld the information that you had requested, and this was somewhat unusual considering, I mean, really you were asking for statistical information as far as I can understand. You weren't asking for confidential names or people's those specifics. Could it be that therefore you were really they were hiding a bit of the numbers because you were only then able to, you state that you were only able to capture 30% of the federally regulated workforce. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So
Okay.
we captured only 30% of the federally regulated workforce, and that was the public service.
Right. And that 30% then, if that's the 621 million, so you had stated that actually would be closer to the $2 billion mark, that women are being shortchanged currently under the fact that the legislation hasn't been implemented.
So the $2 billion that I talked about was something that the government released itself as part of the regulations, and that's over a 10-year period, and that is the net present value, so the value in current dollars of applying the pay equity regime to the private sector. And Salma and Robert can correct me if I'm wrong about the $2 billion. So I seem to be...
Or you're right, actually. Great, okay. So, and this certainly, the pay equity legislation, you had mentioned in the report too that in some instances there was a shortchanging of about $3 an hour. But if you were to take that over the course of someone's entire work life or lifetime, work lifetime, that would significantly impact a senior's pension and what they would be able to live off of in their senior years. Would that be also correct?
And that is totally accurate. So, Madam Chair, if somebody is earning $3 an hour less than they would otherwise earn, it has an impact of about $6,000 per year. And over the span of a career, it can easily get into the tens and tens of thousands of dollars. And that also has an implication on the pension, the retirement pension of that individual through either QPP or CPP, or an employer-based pension plan, because it's virtually always based on the career earnings. So the lower your earnings, the lower your CPP, QPP benefits when you retire, and the lower your pensions as well.
Okay. And of course, that legislation wouldn't be retroactive. We wouldn't actually be able to compensate all the women that I think of that have worked in that public sector, even if it's the 30% that is referenced here, for that pay lost and that time lost. It's interesting too, the Postmasters Union was actually successful in winning their pay equity court case, and they are now dealing with thousands, tens of thousands of claims, because for them it was a 27-year battle to get some of that compensation. But there's quite a lot going forward in terms of the actual implementation of that case and that win for them in terms of dealing with CRA, and they were actually able to get that retroactive pay. So in terms of a timeline that, and they're dealing, like I said, I think they quoted 42,000 claims that are problematic. But what would that, for a much larger federal public sector, what would that look like for the federal government going forward? And would that significantly delay the benefits of the pay equity legislation if it actually will be implemented in a reasonable amount of time?
So, Madam Chair, I'll probably ask Robert or Salma to jump in on the implementation timelines for the pay equity regime, keeping in mind they have less than 1 minute to
answer. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the question. As soon as the act comes into force, it's expected later, early 2021, the employers have 3 years to implement their pay equity regime. An employer may request a lengthening of the period if they, due to some difficulties or the size or large, but that would be for the pay equity commissioner to make that determination.
So this could actually mean that for that delay, we're looking at potentially another 10 years that women could be shortchanged that money, and there would be violations by the federal government as an employer of those human rights.
And that's your time. Now we're going to the second round of questioning. 5 minutes to Ms. Sahota.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Recently, you've been giving reports on the status of our finances and the COVID spending. Given that this government has spent more than any other G7 nation and gotten the least in return, do you believe the government will be able to fulfill its promises of pay equity in the next fiscal year, or will women continue to suffer from pay inequity under this Liberal government?
Well, Madam Chair, that's a legislation, so I would hope that the government will not go against its own legislation and will indeed abide by the legislation that has been voted by parliamentarians such as yourselves. So I have no reason to believe that the government will go against its own legislation and regulations and will not implement pay equity in a timely manner now that it is a legislation, a law of the land, and the regulations, at least some of the regulations, have passed.
My colleague asked about the framework and why it was quicker in Quebec than Canada, and you said it has to do with the willingness of the legislatures. Legislation passed in 2018. It's end of 2020 now. Still no regulations. Can you elaborate on that? Could this have been done any faster? Why do you think it has taken so long?
So, Madam Chair, while I'm no expert on pay equity and the implementation of the pay equity regime, I know a thing or two about government workings and regulation making. So it was the government's own legislation, so they knew this was coming, and I'm convinced they could have implemented regulations, drafted regulations, and implemented regulations faster and have a coming into force that was earlier. Why that was not the case, I don't know. I think that's a question that only the minister and her officials could answer and could provide you with the real answers. One can only speculate, but I cannot answer with any level of certainty as to the reasons for the time lag between legislation and implementation.
You mentioned that the government still hasn't published regulations in Gazette. What should be in those regulations, and when do you believe such regulations should be published? And could that increase the cost, and if so, by how much?
So, Madam Chair, it's clear that regulations can increase the cost of a legislation because, as we often say, the devil is in the details, and details are usually found in regulations. But I'll ask Rob and Salma to jump in on the amount or the aspects of regulations that have not yet been published and what these should cover.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. These regulations were detailing some of the aspects with respect to the methods that employers would be using to assess the value of employment for those job classes that are predominantly female against those that are predominantly male. Other aspects included in these costs were the enforcement, the maintenance of the programs that employers will have to set aside resources to maintain pay equity on an ongoing basis once the regimes are set into place. As for additional costs, depending the act and legislation do indicate, or regulations do indicate, that for the most part the federal government will be able to implement or will be able to use the Act. The framework is set out in the Act for the federal government to implement within the public service. It's, again, those extra details for the private sector, those that are being with 10 or more employees that would have to implement this Act.
Very good. Madame Larouche, 2,5.
Je pense que c'est aux libéraux d'avoir.
I'm sorry, it's up to the Liberals to have their 5 minutes. You are right.
And thank to my colleague across the way, and thank to the witnesses for being here today. It's wonderful to hear the Conservatives that are finally on side of pay equity, because they did vote against this in the Budget Implementation Act. So it's great that my colleagues are on side with this very important act. Mr. Giroux, I have a question for you. Before our government passed the Pay Equity Act, women who felt they were being underpaid compared to their male counterparts were required to make a complaint under the Canadian Human Rights Act. And despite this system, many women continued to be underpaid. In 2019, for every dollar a man earned in Canada, we know that women only earned 89 cents, as measured in hourly wages for full-time workers. Could you speak to the differences between the previous complaint-based system and the new proactive pay equity system that our government will bring into force in 2021?
So, Madam Chair, unfortunately, I cannot speak to the differences between the two regimes, not being very well versed in the pay equity regime myself, but maybe my colleague Rob and Salma could expand a bit on that. Maybe not.
Well, thank you for the question, Madam Chair. The pay equity regime, what it does is it codifies a set of steps now, a set of processes that employers will need to follow the implementation of the regime within their workplace, and that would be, of course, the benefit to the employees. Setting aside this, codifying this takes away some of the burden of employees to put forth a complaint in the Human Rights Commissions, as it would be a process. There's an office now set up, of Office of the Pay Equity Commissioner, that can really focus in on the work or the complaints associated with this. Secondly, it's now employed in the federally regulated workforce. There's a level of transparency that all employers would have this pay equity regime, so all employees know that equal value for equal pay for equal value would be a part in the federally regulated workforce.
Report, you estimate that the increase in public sector employee compensation in 2021-2023 would be $477 million, with an additional $144 million in pensions and benefits. That's $621 million that women had been underpaid, and that certainly had other spin-off economic impacts. Why were these costs never adjusted under the system that was previously in place, the complaint-based system of pay equity?
Well, Madam Chair, I can only speculate, given that Madam Hutchins asked the previous question about the previous regime. So because probably it was way too cumbersome for individual employees, mostly female, to complain and have recourse. So that's probably why the pay has not been adjusted previously, because of the difficulty in getting the points heard, and maybe also a lack of awareness of what it means to have work of equal value as opposed to identical work. So it's a very complex, concept, and it's also very complex when you don't know the intricacies of pay equity to complain and to make your point made and make your point across. So I can speculate these are the reasons. I don't think I'd be far off from the truth if that's my speculation.
Great. It was interesting because previous Oh, my Lord. Mr. Harper said that pay equity was a ripoff, so I'm glad we're addressing it now. One of the next studies that the committee here is going to be working on is the impact that rural women face versus other sectors of other areas of our country. Do you have any comments, or in your work on the Act, did you focus anywhere on the differences in rural, or you just lumped everything together in wages and benefits, or did you carve out and look at the impacts this would have specifically for rural areas?
I don't think we did carve out rural versus urban, but maybe Salma can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that is correct. Our population of interest was only women in the core federal public service we're working.
Okay. How much time, Madam Chair?
20 seconds.
Oh, well, thank you. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Merci beaucoup. Maintenant, vraiment.
Thank you very much. And now it is the Bloc's turn with Ms. Larouche. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Giroux, you responded to a question on the impact for elder women because the Pay Equity Act has not come into force. Elders or women live longer than men, often alone, and do not have the same level of savings as men. Could you speak to this? Because we know that your report states that parliamentarians could encourage the government in that direction and to lead an assessment on other benefits for women. And why would this be important for parliamentarians to have access to that data? And what impact would a cost assessment would have on our work as parliamentarians? Thank you, Madam Chair. This assessment could have very important impact on the information you have, because as I mentioned earlier, we didn't have access to the government's information because it was mentioned as cabinet privacy. Our estimates are based on public data, and the government's estimates, if well conducted, would be more specific and would determine the impact of the enforcement of this act on pay equity, on the gains for employees benefiting from it, prospective gains, because this act is prospective and not retroactive. And the government, given the demographic profile for people benefiting from it, this could also indicate the impact on future revenues for these female employees and retirement income for these employees, because this would be the federal public service covered by pension plan, and future pay or compensation will have an impact on their retirement. Thank you, Mr. Giroux. I talked about a survey in Quebec demonstrating other impacts, a study on private sector businesses, because we know that for the 1.3...
Now we're going to Ms. Matheson for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. So in your report, you also talked a little bit about the Pay Equity Commissioner, and you stated that she was brought on board late 2019, 2020. Now you say, we assume that the Pay Equity Division will likely be fully staffed by 2021. Is that in line with, like in terms of the speed of bringing that on board? Did that seem in line with the slower progress compared to, the regulations and so on brought forward by this government?
So Salma, can you speak on the assumptions regarding the onboarding of the Pay Equity Commissioner?
Yes, thank you for the question. I believe maybe Robert has more information than myself.
With the Act passage as part of a in December 2018 as part of the budget implementation bill. The Pay Equity Commissioner was first appointed in September of 2019, so roughly 10 months later. I understand she was reappointed for a second term this past September. So 9 months for the office. The office is continuing to start its ramping up of their capabilities with respect to tools for employers. But however, the office is still waiting for the act to come into force before it can really fully get itself
so they too have been delayed from the regulations. And do you believe in that study that the Pay Equity Commissioner will have the resources to take on, like the appropriate resources to take on the role that has been set forward by this legislation?
I believe that the amount will probably need to be readjusted depending on how rigorous and how fast federal organizations do indeed implement a pay equity committee and how fast they are in enacting and really implementing the pay equity regimes that they are supposed to enact. So it could well be that the Pay Equity Commission will need more resources depending on how fast and rigorous employers are.
And now we will go to Ms. Wong for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much, witnesses. This is indeed, a very important issue. Now, following, what our previous colleague has said, so the Pay Equity Commissioner is only in office for 9 months. That means, before that, nothing on the government side has been doing, to make things happen. Now, my question is, how about those who are challenged? For example, as part of your role, you are responsible for assisting persons in understanding their rights and also obligations under the PEA. Now, my concern is about those who are very vulnerable and who may not have the ability to understand. So how about those of different ethnicity? All right, and also people with disabilities and people who do not work full-time because of unpaid family care responsibilities. So how would your office be able to help and educate these people? Or is the job of the government to make sure that those employees will be educated?
So thank you for the question. So, Madam Chair, the responsibility of my office is to provide nonpartisan and unbiased information to parliamentarians such as yourselves. The role of educating employees or Canadians about government programs and employer obligations, that's not really under my mandate as per legislation. So I believe that this responsibility would be that of the government, as well as employers to educate and inform their own employees as to their obligations under the pay equity legislation. And the government being also an employer, as one member of the committee pointed out, they also have the double obligation of informing their own employees about their responsibilities and their rights under the pay equity legislation.
Thank you. And my next question is to look at the fact that many, employees will be affected because of their pension. And I'm also looking at seniors who probably will be, impacted by the lack of actions of the government because it's been 5 years. And, if you accumulate over the years, it will mean a lot to them. So can any one of you comment on that, please?
Sure. So, Madam Chair, the impact on seniors will mostly be on future seniors, so those that are not yet retired. But as Madame Wong pointed out, all the current seniors who have not benefited from the Employment Equity Act or the Pay Equity Act, rather, they will suffer in a sense by not having a higher remuneration throughout their career and by having an otherwise lower pension in retirement than they would have had the legislation been in place, for example, since 1996, had it been implemented at the same time as in other provinces such as Quebec. So future seniors will benefit from increased remuneration or pay, but current seniors don't benefit from a legislation that is implemented only these days, so only in 2020-21. So in that sense, yes.
Yeah, how about the part-time workers? Because obviously for part-time workers, their benefits will be much less. And then, I mean, women for various reasons may not be working full-time because of family care giving responsibility. So how would you evaluate that? Or can you put, the impact, tell us the impact on those people?
So thank you. And Madam Chair, I'll ask Salma or Rob if they can speak very briefly on the impact of part-time workers.
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. With pay equity, the evaluation was taken by analysis on hourly earnings, so it would have captured all full-time and part-time workers. An assessment by certain groups was not done in this analysis to capture the full, to disaggregate the full amount.
Very good. And now, Ms. Hutchings, take us home. Last 5 minutes of questions.
Time to Mr. Sari.
Thank you, Madame la Présidente. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'll be sharing my time with Ms. Sidhu. Mr. Giroux, thank you very much for your team's work, everything you have done. My first question, well, you mentioned that the government wasn't very transparent with the numbers, but the estimates, the costs, the regulations, everything was published in Gazette 1 on November 13th. So could you explain why you don't think the information on the regulations and the costs, in fact, that the government wasn't transparent? Yes. So, Madam Chair, when I mentioned the lack of transparency, it's really more the information that was provided to my office. I'm not calling into question whether the government was being transparent in publishing the regulations and the summary of impacts. That's a legislative obligation. My criticism was aimed more at the fact that the government wasn't providing us with the information we needed to estimate the costs for pay in the public sector using the provisions of the Act that makes it possible to prevent the disclosure of information that falls under cabinet confidence. That meant that my office did not have the numbers to conduct the analysis on certain groups of public servants, for example. We did not have access to certain data because the government stated that it was part of the deliberations of cabinet and falls under cabinet confidence. And that's why I made those comments regarding lack of transparency. That's regarding the information that was provided to my office, not in the communication of the regulations. Great. So we were transparent in publishing documents and so on. Thank you. Thank you for your clarifications. You also mentioned regarding costs. It's interesting to see that the Conservative members here are only talking about costs. They're going to talk about COVID, and Canada is one of the best countries in supporting its people and businesses during COVID. There seems to be confusion. They seem to be saying that we spent too much money on COVID, but there's not enough money going towards pay equity. I mean, we're talking about $2 billion or $609 million. Why? I mean, it's always important to look at costs, but the rest is also important. We have to move ahead despite the costs. Isn't that the case? Madam Chair, I don't think that's really a question addressed to me. I think it's more of a comment on Mr. Serre's part. I could only add that the costs to government represent benefits to somebody else. For example, those who will receive that additional pay. My mandate is to estimate the costs of these measures. That's what we did. But of course, cost to government represents advantages to those who will be receiving that extra pay. Thank you. Ms. Sidhu, a minute 20 for you. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mark, sharing time, and thank you all the witnesses for being here to speak with us about the Pay Equity Act, Canada's first proactive pay system. I was proud to vote for this alongside the members of the Liberal caucus, despite the nay vote from the Conservative Party for the Budget Implementation Act. Approximately 1.3 million employees are covered by the Pay Equity Act, about 390,000 in the public sector, and 900,000 federally regulated employees in the private sector. What plans, if any, does the PBO have to do a cost estimate of the implementation of the pay equity regime in the private sector? What are the challenges in conducting such a cost estimate?
So thank you for the question. So Madam Chair, I saw that you waved the yellow card, so I know time is running out. But the challenges in estimating the cost or the benefits for private sector employees is the collection of information from hundreds, if not thousands, of different employers that are in the federally regulated system. So that would be a big challenge. Do we have plans to estimate the cost or the benefits for employees? Not yet, but we are very responsive. We try to be responsive of the needs of parliamentarians. So should a committee like yours request us to do such a study, we would certainly consider estimating the costs or the benefits for employees in the private sector that's federally regulated.
Excellent. And that's our time for today. I really want to thank our Parliamentary Budget Officer and his colleagues from the department for answering so well, and to our committee. Looking forward to seeing you on Thursday. So with that, the meeting is adjourned.